everyone, it is Natalie from Being Intentionally Creative, and today we're going to do something, well, a little different. I was in the Dollar Tree this past week, and being that I live in Canada, it sometimes takes a little longer for anything that's stateside to actually make it up here to Canada. And one of the things that they're slowly starting to get in the Dollar Tree up here is products that are resin related. And I've been waiting for the resin that they have down in the States at Dollar Tree to make it up here to Canada. And when I was in it the other day, I actually found that they had brought in their resin product. And I thought to myself, well, that'll make a perfect video. Let's test it out. Now, because I do things on such a large scale, these small bottles, which are only about 30 mils, really aren't enough for me. However, what I love about the fact that they are so small is that anyone who's wanting to get into working with resin, this gives them a bit of an idea of what they're going to be getting into and not having to spend a lot of money, because I'm going to say I only paid $1.50 for these. Didn't look at the receipt. And unless anything's marked differently, it's $1.50 in the store I go to. It's a great way to get into it, to try it out. Is this resin any good? I have no idea. I've never tried it before, obviously, because I just got it. And as well, I picked up this mold. It's a Paw Print. I have a beautiful miniature schnauzer who I love to pieces, who, I don't know if you have any pets or a dog specifically, but mine likes to wake me up around 6 o'clock every morning. I do love her to pieces. I do not like being woken up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, we're going to use this mold. It's not, again, we're dealing with the Dollar Tree here, so their products aren't up to the standard of what someone like Let's Resin is, J. Diction. And having said that, though, I've also picked up molds that I've paid not a lot for, but more than I paid for this, that aren't perfect either. Again, it's a great place to go if you want to try out resin just to see what you think. They also had colored resin there as well. I've got a couple of them, and it's been a long time since I've used them. And maybe in a future video I'll try them out, because I think they had maybe 6 colors when I was there. I didn't pick any of those up because I was more interested in their clear resin. Having said that now, having said that, it would be a great place to start if you're just wanting to get into resin and you're not sure what to do. What colors are we going to use? We are going to use a translucent red by Illuminite. And you would have laughed if you'd seen what I did. I shook this up and there was actually dye on the bottle. I wasn't really even thinking about it. Well, I wiped it on my pants and I had it all over my hands. So I know I have to wear gloves when I'm working with resin. And you should always make sure your bottles are nice and clean before you pick them up and get dye everywhere. And I got green dye on my hands previous to that when I was putting another bottle away from a previous project. It's going to be one of those days, people. It's going to be one of those days. Anyway, the other colors we're going to use, Magic Resin White and Eye Candy Ghost Red. Recently, I saw a video that Steve McDonald had done, and he was showing different ways of pouring your resin. Oh, look at that. I even got dye inside the Paw Print. Do you believe that? Oh, seriously. Again, be really careful when you're dealing with those bottles. What he did was he was showing different ways of pouring the resin into your mold to get different effects. One of the ones he did was he took a red and a white and he poured them in, like red on the one side, white on the other side. And he got a really interesting effect when he did that. Now, from what I can tell, and I'm doing it without going back and checking out his video, was I believe the one color, I believe the red was translucent, but the whites were a mica powder. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing today, just to see if I can create the effect that he did, because it looks so cool. It's a recent video. It's come out, within the last couple of days, where he's making the hearts. So look for that if you want to go check that out. But the one piece was just way too cool. So it's like, I got to do this. I got to see if I can if I can make it as well. So the test here is, what is this epoxy hardener like? Do we get a lot of bubbles with it? And we know if we don't necessarily, like if you're working in a cold environment, it is good to warm it up. I have warmed both these bottles up, not to a significant amount, but I've warmed them up because I'm, in fairness to the other products I've used, I want to be fair to this. I'm going to mix these up. If I have any left over, because I'm not thinking, like this is approximately 60 mils combined. I don't see that taking 60 mils. So if we have leftover, then I'm just going to use this bigger tea light candle mold, color whatever you want. Now I'm going to put it in here because I already started off and there's a very light pink in the bottom of that. I had thought I might go get some glitter maybe to put in this, but you know what? No, I don't think I will. I'm going to go mix everything up as far as my resin goes. Then we will come back once I've got everything mixed up and I will give you some feedback on how, the resin was working for me when I was mixing it up. Stay tuned and we will be back. Hey again. I have mixed up my resin now. I have my mica powders in here. Again, we've got white by Magic Resin and Ghost Red by Eye Candy. And then we've got the translucent red by Illuminite. And all I did with the Illuminite is I put one drop, like one drop, that's all. This stuff is very intense, very pigmented. If you're going to use it, be very aware of what you're putting into your resin and build it up. Don't just dump a whole bunch in. This runs around $15 a bottle. I've had this for a long time and I still have tons of it in it. Not that I use it all the time. I'm just saying, yes, it's a little expensive. However, this stuff is very pigmented. Yeah. And the other thing I'll say about this, unless they've improved, their green, their translucent green isn't really green. It's more of a blue green. Be aware of that as well. If you watch, I got this off of Amazon, so if you check the comments, people have indicated that the green comes out more of a blue than a green, which I don't quite understand. And when I was really getting into the resin, I was on the hunt for a really good translucent green. I can't really say I've found a really, really nice green as far as the translucent goes. In the mica powders, I've had better luck. And I think if I were to recommend anyone, it would probably be the Eye Candy with their green, because I know the red they've got is bar none the best red mica powders I have found. Enough about that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do exactly what Steve McDonald did. And we're going to see how I fare. And I just want to point out to you just how well I did. I had commented about, shaking this up and getting the red dye all over my hands and everything. I even managed to get it on the packages I was picking up. So again, be very careful if you're shaking something up that your bottle cap is on there. Everything's really nice and tight, and maybe even wear gloves when you're doing it just so you don't do what I did. That's your laugh for the day. Don't do what I did. Okay, so all we're going to do is we're going to slowly pour these side by side, and hopefully you can see. Let's see if I can move it over here a little bit so you can see it better. Can you see better here? You get the gist of it as this is going in. So we're just going to do it slowly. I like to try and think I can get these even when I'm doing them, but yeah, I don't know about you, but sometimes I have a challenge trying to get things even. But basically all he had done was he just poured one on one side, one on the other, and then it just did its magic. It was so cool. So cool. So I'm just trying to, so let's take this up. I don't want to get too much in because I don't want to go over the heart there. But yeah, I think that's enough. I think it's going to have a little bit of a round to it. Let me tell you a little bit about the resin because you weren't watching me mix it up. Yes, there small bubbles in it. I'm trying to think. Micro bubbles in their resin, but I have to admit I was extremely impressed that there weren't like big bubbles. I've worked with some resins that just, even if you warm them up when you're mixing them, you get a ton of bubbles. Yes, I got bubbles, but not a lot, and that impressed me. So we're going to do that. Now, I think I have a little too much in here, so I'm going to take one of my pipettes, and I'm going to very carefully suck some of the white out of here, just along this edge, because I got too much in there. Now, I don't know whether that's going to mess my world up or not from a, you know, mixing perspective. And maybe what I'll do too is I'll take some out of the red side as well. I'm not going to touch this whatsoever. Steve didn't do that when he did his, so in no way, shape, or form am I doing that with mine. I have quite a bit of resin left over, so that mold does not take a lot, which is kind of cool, because then if you had another mold, you could do. How much is it taking? Yeah, I don't have an answer for you on that, but not a lot. So we're going to suck up some of the red. Again, I want it more level. I don't want it going over top of my heart as much as it maybe has. So I'll just get this out of here and just sort of soak it up, and I'll get down level with it, as it were, and see if I can't just make sure it is level, and if I need to add some more, I will. These pipettes are awesome for this kind of thing, you know. So yeah, you might want to have some on hand. And when I've done, I want to do one of my skull pieces on screen, because I came up with something really cool to do. And if you have the pipettes, it's really easy to do this. Now I'm very carefully going to back up here, and I'm just going to see that I'm lined up even, and it looks like I'm pretty good now. I even got red dye on the outside of this mold. Oh my gosh. Way to go, Natalie. Okay, let me get some stuff put back where it belongs. I am going to take my long neck lighter. Like, there's not even a lot of bubbles on the top of this. This is going to be so curious to me when we take this out of the mold, just, you know, how we're doing in general. Okay, so not a lot of bubbles when I mixed it up. I have way more resin. So this worked out to be about, as we say, 60 mils. So I've probably got at least 40 left of this. Yeah, I got about 40 left. So 20 mils, give or take, to do this. And we're going to have to leave this aside. We'll give it 24 hours to set up. We'll see if it does anything. I'm really hoping it does. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. It'll still look really cool. I was almost going to do it in black and red because my dog is black. But I thought it might, if this does what I want it to do and hope it does, then the red would probably show up. You'll be able to see the example better than if I did it with black. That's why I chose red. Okay, let's cover this up because there's nothing else for me to do. We will check back in with this tomorrow and see what, you know, what it's done, how it's set up, whether it did anything magical, fingers crossed. So we'll just cover that up, and I'll keep coming back to that. And now we will just, because I'm sure you have other things to do with your time, but we'll have some fun. And we'll pour this in here the same way I did it in that mold and see what goes on so you can see. I'm not going to be able to show you this until much later, but oops, the red's getting ahead of me. I almost wish I had this on a turntable right now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to switch sides. I'm up for any kind of design in my stuff. I like designs. I like different. So maybe what we'll do, now that we've done that, because this piece, this is not a, I'm just using up my leftover resin. So I'm going to just take and put my red into my white. And that's the way we're going to pour the rest of this to see what it gives me. Now, granted, again, maybe what I'll do is while I'm waiting over the sort of next 24 hours, I'll see how long this sort of takes to set. because sometimes after, 5 or 6 hours, you can actually put another resin on top of it, right, to kind of finish your piece off. So I might just figure out how much more of this I need, and then maybe I'll be able to take this out of the mold as well, and we can see what's happened with it. See if I get any unique designs and what have you. Okay, let's get rid of that. Now, nope, I was going to stir it, but you know what? Decisions, people. Decisions. Let's do a little bit of a swirl in this. Right down to the bottom, right into the center. I tell you, I've mentioned this to you before. Sometimes I don't know when to leave things well enough alone. It's like, well, let's try this and see what happens. I don't know if you do that, but it's like, my husband, when I've done pieces and I found that tiniest little whatever, and he'll look at it and go, there's nothing wrong with this. What are you doing? Don't touch it. Just leave it alone. But sometimes I just can't help myself. I've ruined pieces that way. So there's something to keep in mind, is that you can play with things and ruin them because of what you're doing, right? Because you've played with something far too long. And so, yeah, if I had any advice for someone new starting out, that, maybe everything's not going to turn out the way you want, because resin, just like a paint pour, it does its own thing. And, when you can learn tips and tricks, I've learned a few, but not. Sometimes it's just luck of the draw, what you end up with. And I think it's important for people to not be so hard on yourself when it comes to this, because I have found when I get too hard on myself with the art I'm creating, I mess it up. And that's not fun when you start messing things up, because you're looking for perfection, because you're not allowing, it's doing what it's doing. And sometimes you just can't. I don't know how much of that we got cut off on. I wasn't paying attention to the battery on my machine. Anyway, gonna fix this up really quickly. Okay, we have the dog paw poured. We're gonna let it sit overnight, see what it does. See if the two fuse together somehow and create the really cool effect. Fingers crossed. If not, that's okay too. I might have to go back and watch Steve's video again and see if I can figure out what he's done that I haven't. Or maybe it just doesn't do it because it doesn't do it. We have the rest of our resin poured into this tea light candle holder. So what I might do is, once it sets enough, is obviously I don't have any more of that. I'll have to use my Let's resin that I have to finish filling this up, and maybe I'll do it in who knows what kind of funky color, just because I can. Before I head off, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who responded to my video in regards to what to coat the mix to mold, or I'll say the J Diction, or any of those eco resins. We got a lot of comments on that, with people saying this is what they use. You can check through the comments. Some products, there was one person who commented, they live in Australia. We may not be able to get their product. I've written it down. I'm going to do a little bit more research, but thank you so much, because hopefully that will give people a wide enough range of products that they can look at to use on their mix to mold, or their eco resin. Let's just call it their eco resin in general. So I'm going to do a little bit more research. There have been a few comments on the mix to mold. Glossy, more so I'm finding than the matte. So whether people just aren't using the matte sealer, I don't know. But issues they're having with it, as far as it, brush strokes go. I know there was concern about it being too thick, which, yes, I have found that myself, but I don't know if they did that on purpose. I've got my angels, my pot holder angels, that I'm going to be using some different brushes on just to see if it makes a difference. It is a very thick sealant. That may be having part of the issue. A Southern lady commented that she watered hers down. I'm not a fan of doing that, only because I'm not sure how that's going to break down the product and maybe not make it as good as it would need to be, especially if you're putting it outside. Anyway, I'm going a little bit on with that. I wanted to say thank you very much. So let's stay tuned for what this all is going to do. And I'm just looking at the top of this. Most resins, with the bubbles coming up to the top, they kind of disappear. I am looking at this. I'm not seeing them pop, but that doesn't mean that they're not. So it's going to be very curious to know what we're dealing with. Anyway, we will see you when it's time to take these out of the mold. We are back. Now, I did not get the tea light mold filled up with any more resin, so we have to wait on that. I'll show you how that turns out in another video. Our dog paw, it is ready to come out of its mold. Now, I'm not thinking I got the effect I was looking for with this, but that's okay. The real test here, the real wanting to know with this piece was, how did the resin that I picked up at the Dollar Tree work out? And when I was with this piece, because I said I wasn't touching this because I wanted to see what it did all on its own, but this piece at one point I actually swirled the I'm a loss for words. I swirled the resin and I could feel it getting thicker, so I thought, well, that's a good sign. I mean, yes, you expect it to get thicker and start to harden up, but you don't know when you're buying something from a store where the product is $1.50 for what you're buying. Anyway, it swirled nicely, so it will be curious to see once we take this out how it looks. Without further ado, let's take this out and see how it compares to other resins. It feels firm, which is a good thing, right? That's what you want from your resin when you take it out. Okay, get it off the heart. Okay, so as I said, the mold itself isn't very good. I can see scratches and whatnot on this, so it's not perfect. So what I could do is very carefully take some UV resin and just go over the top of this. If I was wanting to make this, you know, better than what it is, I could, you know, maybe sand it down a little bit and then put the, you know, UV resin on top of it and make it look better. I do have some air bubbles here and here. I'm just going to feel around. I have another one down here. So yes, I do have air bubbles, but I'm not surprised by that. I wasn't paying a lot of attention when I was pouring it in. It was more, let's get the red and white on their own opposite sides. But in all, I mean, there are not a lot of air bubbles in this now. I'm going to switch my glasses out, and I'm going to take a close-up look at this. So this didn't really do what I wanted it to do. As I say, if you've checked out Steve McDonald's video, his heart that he did with the red and white turned out really cool. But let's see. I'm trying to kind of hold it up to the light here without flickering it all over the place. But it doesn't look bad. As I say, I think this is great value for someone who is looking to try out resin because they don't want to buy, you know, gallons of the stuff, and they don't want to pay a lot for it because they don't know if there's something they're going to want to get into. So I would say all in all, it's not a bad resin. Now I want to just try and bend this a little bit. So yeah, it's still a little flexible. I'll give it that, but it's also only been 24 hours. So that doesn't surprise me because, you know, resins take, you know, a few days to get really hard. But all in all, I have to admit, I'm impressed for what I paid for it. And you know, the amount I got, it's looking pretty good. Yeah. So the idea with the red and white was to have it look more veiny through here where the white and red mixed up. But again, I got thinking about this, that maybe it's because of the mold itself. Like, it's not, the heart is, it was flat. There were no indentations like this, so that might have something to do. So I might, you know, I might have to go get some more of this, you know, inexpensive resin and make myself another piece, but use, let's say, a coaster or a heart like he did, and see if I can get to do what he did. But anyway, the gist of all of this was to, how is this going to perform as a resin? And I have to admit, I'm actually impressed by it. They'll never get, you know, huge gallons of it in, but overall, as an inexpensive resin, I think it did a pretty good job. So let me know if you've tried out the Dollar Tree resin, what you've thought about it. The molds, no, I'm not expecting anything great with the molds, but as I had mentioned earlier in the video, that I can order a mold that's, you know, more expensive and have issues with it having marks and whatnot in it. But you know what? Again, if you're looking for an inexpensive way to try out resin to see if it's something you want to work with, then, I mean, my experience with this has been okay. And I can see myself picking up a little bit more of it. And even just to do the random play pieces that I want to do, to see, you know, what kind of, whatever I can come up with, and saving my really good resin for those projects that require an upgraded resin. Hopefully this video has been helpful to you, to let you know what I think of the Dollar Tree resin. And if you know of anyone who's, you know, looking to start into the resin, maybe this is somewhere you point them to. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you for, you know, commenting on the previous videos. I'm loving that. And subscribing and liking my channel. I look forward to doing more of these, you know, sort of test videos, random videos in the future. And I actually have a kind of neat video coming up. And, well, you'll just have to stay tuned to get to find out what that one's about. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Take care. Bye for now.